first of all, thank you so much, Demetrius. I really appreciate the introduction. Unlike Mr. Grimes here, I was a surface warfare officer in the Navy. So that means that he did all the cool Top Gun stuff. I did all the traditional driving and fighting ship stuff, the more boring stuff, Pirates of the Caribbean, but fast forward it 300 or 400 years. But thank you so much for the introduction. I really appreciate it. So my name is Daniel Anthony. I'm running for Congress in Florida's 9th District. I'm a Christian, I'm a veteran, I'm a husband to a Hispanic immigrant, I'm a father to a 2-year-old boy who represents the future of our nation. I have a lifelong history of service to our country, to our beautiful state, to our communities, and I want to take that history of service and use it to serve you in Washington, D.C. I'm a Navy vet, as Mr. Grimes already pointed out. I'm a Navy veteran, and during my time in the Navy, I learned several invaluable lessons. I learned them during my first deployment to the Middle East, where I was deployed in support of Operation Inherent Resolve in the fight against ISIS. I learned them during my second deployment to Puerto Rico, following the devastation of Hurricanes Irma and Maria, if you remember those, helping and providing humanitarian relief and aid to the people affected there. The most important lesson, though, that I learned while in the Navy was how to save a sinking ship. Guys, I don't know if you're aware or not, but the ship of state that we're standing on right now is sinking, okay? It's sinking, and the way to save it is by firing the people in charge. We need to fire Darren Soto, my Democratic opponent in the 9th District. We need to fire Nancy Pelosi from House leadership, right? And in 2024, we need to fire Joe Biden. Do you agree? Do you agree? Okay. I want to make sure. Maybe I walked into the wrong hall, right? So we need to fire these individuals. But it's not just enough that we fire the people that are currently in charge, right? Because a leaderless ship is just as likely as a poorly led ship to run aground or to run into the rocks. We need good leadership. We need good leaders to take over. What does a good leader look like in today's America? Someone who's going to get inflation down. Someone who's going to get gas prices down. Someone who's going to get illegal immigration into this country down. It's someone who's going to protect our free speech rights. Someone who's going to protect the lives of the unborn. And it's someone who's going to protect the lives and innocence of our children. A good leader looks like somebody who's going to inspire hope in our country, who's going to inspire hope for the future of our country, and who's going to inspire hope for the future of our world. In short, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to elect a good leader, you need to support me. Thank you. You can clap. I love it. Okay, so you heard the stump speech. I told Stephen here, first of all, I want to say, Courtney McLean? There you are. Okay, so Courtney actually set me up with Stephen. She was the one, she followed me on Twitter. I saw that she belonged to UCF, and I was like, hey, well, there you go. There's a school that's here, because I live in Lake Nona. I'm running for the 9th District, and I wanted to, my wife is a Knight. I always thought you guys were the Pegasuses or Pegasi.
No.
She's like, no, it's a separate thing. I understand. Okay, I'm sorry. I've learned. Not the Golden Knights either, right. Just the Knights. Anyway, but I want to thank Courtney for getting me in touch with Stephen. I told Stephen I'm not a big believer in PowerPoints, as apparently you're not either.
Right. That's why I just put the pictures.
And that's exactly. So the reason I don't like PowerPoint, you can say I could cite a bunch of studies to y'all, but the real reason I don't like it is it distracts from this. Who wants to be distracted from this? Other than my wife, but that's aside. But aside from that, so I don't have a PowerPoint because the real reason I don't have a PowerPoint is because I want to make this less about me, and I want to hear from you. I want to hear, what are the issues that are most important to you? What are you concerned about? So let's just raise your hands. What issues do you have that are important to you that you're concerned about?
Rights within the workplace.
Rights within the workplace. Okay, now what are we? Can you specify just a little bit more?
Sure. For example, the vaccine mandates.
Yep.
With nurses, for example, with people, first-line workers.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. So I just wanted to make sure because obviously there's a lot of talk about workplace issues right now, but vaccine mandates. I really can't build too much off of what you've already said regarding vaccine mandates, because as a veteran, it has actually touched me personally. I know people who have been kicked out due to these vaccine mandates within the military, and I understand that frontline workers, medical workers, are also facing the same pressures on them. It's incredible to me. You know, a few minutes ago, you were just talking about the difference between the vax and the unvax. Really, it's just between the haves and the have-nots, because it's funny how these governors, right? Governor Newsom can appear in a restaurant that's been shut down for COVID. Nancy Pelosi can get a haircut, right? No one's wearing a mask. No one's doing this outdoors, right? So it's really not about the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. It's about, how powerful.
Power and control.
It's power and control, exactly right. And so as soon as I'm elected, of course, I'm going to support and propose any legislation that I possibly can to shut down any kind of illegal mandate, illegal, unconstitutional mandate for a disease that, I'm sorry, what was the mortality rate on COVID again? Less than 0.1%. But yes, we have to mandate that everyone gets it. And by the way, if you don't get it, we're going to ruin your livelihood. We're going to cancel you from our culture. And we're going to shove you to the wayside. So, did I answer that question? Okay.
Thank you.
I get very passionate.
National debt.
National debt. Yes. So it's kind of weird, right? We're Republicans, but in the last few years, not even the last few years, in the last few decades, Republicans have become synonymous with as the party of big spending in reality. It's a different kind of spending, right? But we spend just as much as the Democrats, just on other things. It's ridiculous, and we need to cut it out. We need to get to a balanced budget. I'm not saying that you elect me in the next 2 years, we're going to have a perfectly balanced budget. What I can tell you is that I would not vote for any legislation that did not have offsets within its own continuity to ensure that we are not adding to the national debt. I have a 2-year-old son. I want to make sure that by the time he's 12 years old, the United States is still solvent. So, no, national debt is a major issue to me.
Well, you said you have a 2-year-old son. What would you have to do with in terms of indoctrination and education for young students and stuff like that? Like back then, like in colleges and stuff like that, politics really wasn't like shoved into people's faces, especially in high school. I faced that. So, what would you say is something that you would do to battle something like that, holding responsibility for teachers not indoctrinating kids at a young age?
I really like that question. Let me break it into 2 parts, if you don't mind. In case you couldn't hear, he was asking about indoctrination in schools. So first, I want to point out, you noted 2-year-old son. I've actually been told a few times now, they're like, aren't you a little young to be running for office right now? I'm 30 years old, full. My wife is 21. But I'm 30 years old, and so she's not. Anyway, I'm 30 years old, and so people tell me, well, why don't you wait until you're older? And I have 2 answers for them. First of all, I'm 30. I'm not quite sure if there's going to be a country around by the time I'm 40 or 50 at the rate that we're going downhill. So seems like the perfect time to run in this situation. And on top of that, talking about my 2-year-old son, I'm fully invested in the future of this country. You look at Nancy Pelosi, you look at Joe Biden, even look at Mitch McConnell, okay? No offense to any of them, but statistically, 10 years from now, they're not likely to be around any longer. I actually have to live in the country that we're creating right now. My son has to grow up in the country that we're creating right now. So I'm fully invested in fixing this country, not just leaving it to the next generation. Speaking more directly to your question about indoctrination, it's a good question. I'm a very strong states' right advocate. One of my big platforms running is I want to return power to the states, because we're supposed to be a bastion of different laboratories of democracies, what James Madison called it whenever he was writing the Federalist Papers. Every state was supposed to be an independent laboratory of democracy. We were supposed to see what worked, what didn't work, and then over time the other states would adopt, right? So I don't want to impose too much of the federal will on state government. However, what we're seeing right now is exactly that, but in the opposite direction. We're seeing the national government give incentivizing states to indoctrinate our children in gender theory and sex theories, in just propaganda. And basically they incentivize through money, right? They say, well, hey, we'll give your state $2 trillion in an earmark $2 billion for education in an earmark if you agree to install these programs in your curriculum. I would take away anything like that. I would remove any incentives to teach anything other than the core competencies, which frankly our country is in desperate need of. We actually need to know how to do things like write and do math. We need to be able to keep up with China. We need to keep up with I know Russia, is a very slowly dying bear, but the truth is, the threats aren't all just behind us in the Cold War. The threats are ahead of us, and they're advancing past us. We need to get our children on the right route. So while I wouldn't really push for anything in Congress, like I would just push for the core competencies. I would remove any earmarks that promised money to schools that taught things that were outside of what a student is supposed to learn. No one should be teaching my son about what. They shouldn't be teaching my 5-year. Whenever he's 5 years old, he certainly shouldn't be learning about sex in the classroom, which is what Governor DeSantis just signed off on. So
you have a question.
yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah.
Second Amendment.
Second Amendment. No. No, yeah, Second Amendment. No, of course, as a gun owner myself and as a veteran, gun ownership is extremely important to me. We're very blessed. So I was originally born in Texas, right on the border, the good border, but in El Paso. So I come from a gun-loving state, and I moved to a gun-loving state after my time in the Navy, as I've realized in my time in Florida. So I would, of course, continue to propose. Thankfully, the Second Amendment is a national amendment. So that is something that, unlike with education, I have no problem imposing the federal government's weight and authority on the states in that regard. Any state that tramples on Second Amendment rights is trampling on the Constitution. I graduate from the University of Florida's law school in next month or 2 months. But you didn't have to go to law school at all to understand that an amendment is a federally imposed national mandate on every state. So I fully support I fully support the enforcement of federal of the federal government on any kind of limitation on firearms and stopping those from being imposed.
So,
I'm sorry. Actually, I'm so sorry. Which one of y'all had your hands up first? Because I know how tiring it gets.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll do him. Then I'll do. Does that work? Okay.
okay, yeah. So I know we talked about it before with Commander Grimes, but big tech, specifically Section 230 reform.
Section.
It's the section that essentially gives corporations rights to moderate their communities in a way that I believe they're abusing to silence certain discussion they don't like, while being able to hide from the fact that they are stepping on First Amendment rights and the public square argument.
Okay. I'm gonna encircle this in a little bit of a broader frame because I understand what you're talking about. I took federal tax this last semester, so me and you can have a discussion afterwards and really get into 230. But I want to encircle this because First Amendment rights, big tech. I don't know who it was over here, but someone talked about So you talked about big tech earlier. These all kind of go together in our modern age, right? Because when we're talking about big corporations, who are we really talking about, right? We're talking about it's called Meta now, not Facebook, but Meta, we're talking about these kinds of companies. When the Constitution was ratified, the Founding Fathers intended for free speech to be free within the public square. You were talking about the public square. The public square is no longer a physical space, and we're deluding ourselves if we act like it is, right? It's a virtual space. It's a digital space. If I go out into the street and start screaming about Second Amendment rights, people are just going to look at me sideways, right? But if I go on Twitter or if I go on YouTube and I make a video or I do a live stream about it, people are going to listen. That's the way people communicate nowadays. In order to keep the Founding Fathers' original intention when they wrote the Constitution for our First Amendment rights relevant in the 21st century, we have to update our understanding of what that is. Which is why whenever I'm elected, I'm going to, if no one's going to do it, then I'll do it myself. I'm going to propose a legislation that covers, no, you're fine. Dude, that happens to me every single day of my life. I was in trial just yesterday, actually I had a trial just yesterday, and as I'm in front of the jury giving my opening marks, you hear that Brittany says, hit me baby one more time, I don't know, go. Anyway, whole other story. That was a lot of fun. I'm a great prosecutor. Anyway, but anyway, we have to modernize our sensibilities, and so we need to pass legislation. And there are some Supreme Court opinions where people are like, well, you see, the Supreme Court has already said that the digital square isn't the public square. Then screw them. Guess what? We'll pass an amendment because we need to ensure that First Amendment rights are enshrined for the modern age, right? We need to be able to make sure that you can't get kicked off Twitter because you had the wrong opinion. We'll talk more about 230, but I understand what you're saying, that companies are using right? They're leveraging the fact that we basically treat them as private individuals in some respects, but then we treat them as these big, untouchable entities in other respects. And they just pick and choose, depending on the circumstance. So, oh no, you can't touch me, I'm a private citizen. But then on the other hand, oh no, you can't tax me that much because I'm a big company. You know, like this is gonna hurt the jobs that these are gonna hurt the jobs and the people that I employ. We have to get rid of that distinction. And the first step to that is either passing legislation, and if that gets shut down by the Supreme Court, then pass a freaking amendment to make sure that our First Amendment rights are enshrined in the digital square. And then, I'm sorry.
So recent gas price increases due to the closure of the gas line, and then also, if you don't mind, inflation and how that's affected middle class citizens and young adults and everybody.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about those in turn. First of all, once again, this is the benefit of being 30, right? I'm not some geriatric who, earned all my money in big law in New York and now I'm kind of riding high, right? I'm living it with you. We're feeling it, especially gas prices. I can only fill half my tank for my truck before coming here. Because it's literally so outrageous right now. I'm not gonna destroy our family budget, So gas prices, as far as you're asking me about like what will I do to fix gas prices, energy independence, right? I mean, I come from Texas, right? I know the power of domestic oil and domestic drilling, and I know the jobs that it can provide. I know the booms that it can provide for local economies. People want to talk about it, and they want to talk about, yeah, but drilling, it causes, they want to talk about global warming, they want to talk about climate change, but then these are the same people who have no trouble going to the Ayatollah or going down to Venezuela and the Maduro regime and saying, hey, do you mind drilling for us? Does Iran live on a different globe? Are we less concerned about their drilling than we are about our own? Right? Does that make any sense? So, yeah. I sound stupid to myself even asking that question. I mean, it's like, yeah. So, domestic energy independence is where we need to be headed. I don't disagree with the idea that electric vehicles could be a powerful tool in the future. I don't disagree with the idea that could be useful for all of us. Am I running out of time?
No.
Oh, okay. I don't disagree with any of that, but at the same time, we have to get there first. We can't just go. This is a real let them eat cake moment. Pete Buttigieg had a few weeks ago, right, where he was like, "Oh, just go buy. If you have an electric vehicle, you don't have to worry about that." He didn't say those exact words, but he was talking about electric vehicles in America. Do you know what the MSRP is on an electric vehicle right now? It's $55,000 starting. And by the way, because of the supply chain crunch and because of inflation, that is just starting. The MSRP is no longer the top dollar you pay. That's the bottom dollar. They're gonna talk you up from that. So, and then the second one, which was
And just overall inflation prices.
inflation sucks.
Well, yeah.
And I will stand by that statement.
Heck, you look at a grocery store anymore, and something that used to be a few dollars now is doubled, tripled in price.
Well, let's talk about the fact grocery stores. Let's talk about the fact that whenever I go in a grocery store, why is it that 24 shelves are always empty now? Y'all notice that? Am I the only one? Right? Yeah? You seeing the same thing there? Yeah, I see it everywhere. Okay, this all ties hand in hand, right? Supply chain crunch. I was a Navy guy. I was a ship guy. It's not as exciting as Top Gun, okay? I get it, okay? But this is the unsexy side, and I did see the supply chain up close and personal. My entire job was protecting the shipping lanes between the Middle East and the United States, right? I crossed the Strait of Hormuz 35 times. So whenever we talk about inflation, it goes hand in hand with these supply chain issues, which the Biden administration has exacerbated. Right? We have Jacksport to the northeast of us. We have one of the largest ports on the East Coast, and it's barely getting any service. Why aren't we subsidizing companies who are trying to get in from China into California? Why don't we subsidize them so that they're able to go through the Suez Canal or go around South America and come up and use Jacksport, use Norfolk, use these eastern ports that we have, use Houston, right? We could get more supplies out. We could also further enhance the the trucking industry by doing that. And then inflation, it's the government out of control. It's government spending out of control. This is what I was talking with you about a few minutes ago. Let's cut the government spending. Let's make sure that for every dollar we spend, we're cutting it from somewhere else so that we don't continue to just produce trillions of dollars that drives us deeper into the ground. There's obviously, I was an economics major. I realize that there are issues with the Federal Reserve. I'm not going to get into all that now. Those are things that are out of our control. But what is within our control is how much we spend. Stephen?
How can students get involved in your campaign?
It's a great question, Stephen. And it's one I wish I had been prepared for. Wait a minute, I am prepared. Whoa, plot twist. All right, you can sign up. It's right here by the pizza. I'm just gonna piggyback off of you paying for the pizza. I don't have pizza, but I have paper. So.
You got it next time. Yeah, you got it next time.
I'll cover next time. Y'all ever been to Lazy Moon? I'll buy y'all Lazy Moon next time. We go.
Just one final question on my end. So recently there was a plan that talked about doing a 20% increase on the wealth use and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And recently he also talked about in his plan how the corporate tax rate would go from 21 to 28% versus the 2017 tax cut.
Mhm.
So what would that look like for a middle class American in terms of almost like taxation in terms of not being taxed more than what middle class already is taxed for?
Okay, and I'm getting single out. My time's almost up. Can we talk a little bit more afterwards? But let me give a broad statement. Let me give a good political answer, and then we'll talk more specifically afterwards. But you are asking about the wealth tax. A wealth tax is the stupidest idea I've ever heard, and it's not because I'm certainly not pro-rich. Okay, I just told you I can only fill up half my truck, so I'm not sitting here trying to protect my own assets. The reason a wealth tax is stupid is because wealth is not income, right? We need to figure out if we want to tax those who are rich, we need to close loopholes within the tax system as a whole. I'm all for closing tax loopholes to make sure that the Elon Musks of the world, I love the Elon Musk, but the Elon Musks of the world are able to pay their fair share. I'm all for that. Calling it a wealth tax, though, either Biden doesn't, either he doesn't know what wealth means, or he has a Soviet era dystopia in mind for us, because wealth it's not what you have in your bank account, right? It's what your total worth is, what your net worth is. Well, that's something that's intangible. You could only have $500 in your bank account, but have a net worth of $1 million, right? If your company's doing well. Well, if you're being taxed off that net worth, then you're going to be bankrupt because you don't have that money in your bank, right? People, especially that would especially hurt small business owners, right? People who have all their wealth tied into their business. My mother-in-law, for instance, she's an immigrant from Colombia. She's a real estate broker, and she's also she does taxes here in Central Florida. She would be destroyed by a thing like that. She doesn't live a rich and luxurious life, but the business would show that she has a lot of wealth. It's a really stupid thing that he said. And either he went off the note cards that they're giving him, or he was using the note cards and they just really want a communistic dystopia. So I'm being told my time is up. So thank y'all so much. And I see your hands up. Anyone can ask me questions afterwards, by the way. We'll talk more after. But thank y'all so much.